lost the person.
Hey y'all, what's going on? Welcome to our live stream. It's me, Bear. So once again, we are here to have a conversation about something that's important to a variety of different people from the perspective of the black trans masculine person. So BTMOhio, Black Trans Men of Ohio, presents the Men of Morpheus live stream. We are a collection of Black trans masculine people who seek to increase the visibility and equity of the Black trans masculine individual. As I mentioned, with this forum, we're going to do it through conversation. So today we're going to talk about dating and relationships. But before we get started, let's do some introductions so everybody knows who everybody is. You already know me. I'm Bear. My pronouns are he, they. And let's go with what age was your first relationship, however you define relationship. So if you want to include the ones from elementary school, you can do that. I'm going to say my first relationship was when I was 21. Who wants to go next? I'm going to have to call on somebody. Y'all going to make me. We're going to go with India. I see you.
What's going on? India, aka Indalo. I go by he, she, they, them, we, yeah. um, my first relationship, I was 17. 17. Yeah.
All right. We're
Good
going to
old
come back
Yahoo chat
to the
room.
significance of those in a minute. So we'll just share the ages just so everybody knows. We'll come back to the significance. I appreciate you sharing. Who wants to go next?
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm Malachi. I go by Mel. My pronouns are he, him. My first, I think, significant relationship or real relationship was when I was 21 as well.
Nice. Who's
My name
next?
is Chauncey. My pronouns are he, him as well. And my first reciprocal romantic relationship was about the age of 17.
We got a theme going. All right, Chris.
All right, Chris. Pronouns is he, him. First relationship. The first one that I claim, I'll say high school, and whatever age you are, as a junior in high school was when I'll say my first relationship. So we'll go with that.
That's 17. It's 17.
17. Okay, we'll go 17. That's the thing.
So we got a theme. 17 and 21 seems to be the ages that we experienced our first significant, for however we define that, relationship. Let's look at the definition from some formal perspectives. I don't have the specific websites to quote from, but here we go. Relationship defined as the way in which two or more concepts, objects, or people are connected, or the state of being connected. And let's just go over dating real quick so we can get the formal definitions out the way. People seeing each other socially due to romantic interest. Also, a period of time when you're learning about another person. So I think those definitions, they, for the most part, you get the concept of what a relationship is. You get the concept of what dating is. We experience them every single day in our everyday goings ons. And we'll talk about our lived experience and how we define relationships. So that could be friendships, romantic relationships, however you define that, whether you believe in monogamy, polygamy, polyamory. What's the other ones? Whatever kind of type of relationship you want your relationship to look like, we're going to talk about our perspectives and our lived experience. So, who wants to go first? I feel like Mel wants to go first.
No, Mel doesn't want to go first, but since I was called on, um, so my interpretation of a relationship or being in a I'm in a long-term relationship. I'm married to a female, so um and we live a monogamy life, and that's, that's not for some people. I've come from a background where I was what I call a cheater, so I'm a born again, you
Mm,
know uh faithful person now, and it has its challenges, but it is what it is.
I appreciate that perspective. Um, I've personally never experienced being the cheater, um, but I was cheated on in my very first relationship, which was at 21. And so I appreciate that perspective because I stayed. I was cheated on and I stayed for like another 6 years. Um, and that's just how that went for me. So it's interesting to hear that. Um, I'll go with my like kind of definition of relationships. I think it's something that should be reciprocal. I'm personally right now single by choice. I've chosen that for myself for the past 2 years. Um, I'm not really into dating because I just don't feel like that fits me as a person, in the same way that it gets expressed out socially with other people. Um, and we'll delve more into what relationships look like to us, from more specific standpoints, but just as a general concept. I think relationships should be reciprocal. You should feel loved. It shouldn't be something necessarily that you have to question, even despite your own triggers in your mind, however the narrative works in your head. If you're experiencing those triggers on a regular basis with somebody, regardless of if they say they care about you or not, sometimes you have to take your separation from them. And I think that plays an integral role, our own discernment as to how we want to feel in relationships, versus like just not wanting to be alone, just wanting somebody to be with, so on and so forth. So that's me. Who wants to go next?
Relationships, the definition of relationships, as you pointed out previously, um, there's a dictionary version, right? There's like an actual definition of a relationship. Um, my thought process, um, or my adaptation to relationships is that it is a living thing. Um, and by living thing, it means that it should be nurtured, it should be generative, it should be fed. Um, all of these things are different perspectives than what I thought a relationship was in my young 17-year-old self, right? So relationship gets redefined for me. I even thought it was a little bit difficult for me to answer the original question, because when you say what was the age of your first relationship, my first relationship was in the womb with my mother. You know what I'm saying? So when we talk about that, um, but that is why I also added specific keywords to my answer. My first romantic reciprocal relationship. So I had like many crushes. There was many times that I was in relationships with people in my head,
Mm-hmm.
that were not in relationships with me. Um, but also, I think that my 17-year-old self in that relationship, really started to learn about the accountability of relationship and the relating part of relationship. Um, so this is why I have fast forward to this part of my life and understanding relationship to be a living thing. And because it's a living thing, it's very hard to nail down into one specific definition. A relationship is whatever you make it. And that's why you have so many different modalities, so many different aspects of relationship, poly, you know, I think I just recently learned about solo poly, maybe like a few months ago. Learning about monogamy, learning about people who don't even desire to be in relationship at all. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So there's so many different. It's just very hard to answer that question in my personal mind. So I'm just gonna go with, to me, relationship is a living thing.
I like that perspective though, because it is. It's constantly evolving, particularly as we go through different relationships, and pointing out that your first relationship was with your mother in the womb. That is our first relationship. All humans start there. Without that relationship, we would not be here. However, you perceive your mother, like that person as a human, as a human concept in the world might be different than the relationship you built in the womb. That's a whole different relationship. Once you actually come out into the physical beingness, now you have to actually develop who you are through the extension of that person. So, thank you. I appreciate that. All right, we got two left.
All right, so let me jump in here on relationships. Uh, whew, relationships. Well, if you know me, you know I got two of them because I fall under the line of poly. Which don't get it confused. We are not swingers. Okay, we actually have two separate individual relationships with two separate people.
Mhm.
Like they both complete me in different ways, right? So for me, it's like I literally have two loving relationships with two separate people. But going back to like my first relationship, you know, uh, back in high school that I count, it was my first time actually. The reason why said is my first relationship is because the first time I experienced heartbreak,
Mm.
right? Because I had really have fallen for this girl, and I thought, that I was actually going to have a relationship with her, but come to find out, she had other plans, and
Mhm.
so that's why, I was like, but it was high school, it was young, so that's why for me it was like, that for me that was kind of my first relationship because of that reason. So yeah.
Nice. Those first relationships, especially the first heartbreak, can really change you as a person, and how you relate to others
Hmm.
intensely. Uh, all right, X, let's go.
Oh, I saw relationships. I still do, honestly, but with more maturity as a fairy tale. I grew up watching Disney, and
Yes.
that romantic whirlwind of just a fairy tale.
Mhm.
I believe it's true. It's true. I can say that is true, especially how I met my fiance that I'm engaged to now. My first relationship was long distance, we, but it was still a relationship because we connected. We connected on an emotional level. Um, and that was my senior year, right before going into the military. It didn't work out. Um, so I understand where Chris came from. It's like, yeah, no, the other person got different plans. When it came time to actually meet up, because my basic training ended up being in the same place they were at, it never happened.
Oh
So
wow. Yeah.
it was yeah, old school catfish before you could verify anything. But
Yeah.
it was
Damn.
still a relationship because we connected. Um, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. That's the. I feel like the long distance relationships sometimes get pushed kind of to the back of our minds. It's not really something that people actively think about when you think about relationships. That long distance aspect can be harder to get through, especially when you have to trust a person you've never met to communicate with you and be like real. From like there's a certain different accountability when somebody's in your face Not to say people can't lie and cheat, but different accountability when somebody's far away. They could be telling you anything, doing anything you really don't know. So
So
it takes a lot of trust to do
But
that.
the second part to that is when those long distance relationships, you have time to get to know someone without sex blinding that. You know what I'm saying? So you can get to know them on a deeper level than just the physical.
Absolutely. I agree with that. It's part of the reason I'm not dating right now is because it involves sex for most people. That's what they think about when they're like, "Oh, I'm dating this person. Have y'all had sex yet?" Like that's one of the questions people be asking, and like that's not what I'm interested. That's not what I'm here for, me personally. So it's off the table for me. I'm not. We got to be getting married. I'm officially at that stage in my life. Like if we're not getting married, you're not touching me. I don't trust you until we're tethered for life. Because once we're tethered for life, it's over. I'm not doing that again. This is it. So that's a great point. The long distance really helps you solidify a bond. If you're really, if you have two people who are genuinely invested. That was me. All right. So let's talk about what our relationships look like. We can start with, for those who haven't shared about that first initial relationship, whichever one you gave the age for. How did that relationship change you? I'll go first because I see a lot of thinking faces. So, I feel like one of the things I've been afforded to do in my life is really sit in my awareness of self. Um, and part of that is reviewing relationships and the relationships I've been in. My first relationship was my longest, and that was what, almost 10 years. We were like a couple of months short of 10 years. And that was the person who cheated on me year 3, and I stayed for 6 more years. From the perspective that I have now, I know that that relationship helped me understand what interacting with humans is about. And I say that in that way because as a person, knowing me now, I am definitely on the spectrum, because I watched people, and that's how I learned to interact with other people, is by watching other people do it and then emulating it as best as I could. And it never came off right because I wasn't good at it. So that first relationship, I was allowed the space to interact with a person from a very authentic like space within myself that I had never really accessed, and have this person respond in a way that, like, I'm used to interacting with my family, you know? I didn't really have a lot of friends. So the friends I did have, I was used to interacting with them in a very small way. Having this very intimate relationship and having it develop and be that long lasting, I learned so much about what I wanted and didn't want long term in a relationship. I learned how much I was willing to commit myself to a relationship, to another person, even without the long term desire or passion, because that kind of faded for me. That wasn't really a thing that was there to begin with, if I'm being honest, because I was following what other people did in the world. I was just in a relationship because that's what people were doing. This is what I observed. This is what we're supposed to do. Let me go do it. This person asked me out. Let me go be in this relationship with this person. Like, I just snowballed into a relationship. It was never something I consciously thought, oh, I want to be with this person. And having that perspective and understanding myself in this way now helps me consciously choose who I want to be with instead of just being with whoever shows up, if that contrast makes sense. So that's how my first relationship like really helped change who I am and how I perceive myself now. Anyone else want to share?
Yeah, I'll go next. Um, my first relationship, honestly, nothing really changed. It was uh my very last relationship before the one I was in now that had the biggest effect on me. My first relationship was okay. Well, no, it changed a bit. I was able to come out and say, "Hey, I like girls."
Yeah.
That was that significant part in that. Um, but as far as figuring out what it is that I wanted in a relationship, in a person, what I learned more about me, it was um my last marriage. In high school, I really wasn't into dating. Like I seen what all my friends are going through and stuff, and it was like I don't want the problems. Like I'm just trying to trick or treat. Like can we just ride our bikes? You know, like I'm not I'm not worried about that. I'm not. Oh, I want to have fun right now. Y'all keep that. But yeah, at the same time, I enjoyed the thought of eventually getting into a relationship. Um, where I changed the most was my previous marriage, and now that was heartbreak. That was heartbreak. Like you think something is heartbreak beforehand until you actually get your heartbreak. And it's like, oh, damn, yeah, that was nothing. Um, but that's where I grew the most because I was able to learn what it is that I really didn't want, and it allowed me to challenge me as far as not trying to people please
Yeah.
big time and losing myself within somebody else and focusing more on somebody else and pushing all of my stuff to the side.
That was a big one for me too. Because that
Yeah.
first relationship, you're like, for me, because I didn't have a solid sense of myself, it was real easy for me to just be like, okay, I'm with this person, so I do what they do.
Hmm.
Like, this is who I am now. These parts of myself that I didn't understand, I'm gonna fill them with however this person responds to it. You know, and
Hmm.
you do lose yourself in that space.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Learn that the hard way.
Mm, yeah.
I think losing yourself sometimes comes far earlier. Our last conversation was around the authentic self, right? Like, authenticity. And I think that, especially in a lot of different situations, I think, generally as Black people, um, as trans people, as transmasculine people who are often invisible in a lot of situations, I think that oftentimes the people pleasing in us is so prevalent for especially earlier years in your life before you begin to settle into who you are as a person. And I'm not just talking about transness, but like there's a level of when you're dealing with this, if you were young, I was born in the 80s, raised in the 80ish 90s era, you know what I'm saying? And we know that, we remember the terms like bull daggers and the Bible Belt. Like we remember all of the things that we had to go through with that. So I think there was a level of survival that we lived in. So I bring that up to say that I think the people pleasing comes from a survival tactic where you don't get an opportunity to know yourself because you're literally just trying to survive. And then when you finally, for me, it came when I left my mama's house. You know what I'm saying? I started to settle, like slowly but surely begin to settle into who I was. But I realized that I didn't have an opportunity to experience life in the same way that other people did because I was just trying to make sure I didn't mess anything up. You know what I'm saying? Make sure that I just survived. I lived a lot of my youth in a very detached state. I remember things, but I don't remember the emotional connection to them because I remember them and I remember how I should have felt, but I don't remember the feeling because I didn't get an opportunity to really feel it because I wasn't in myself. So then fast forward into your adulthood when we're talking about relationships and you're talking about having a solid sense of yourself. Well, you're low key like a late blossomer because now it's like I'm doing things, I'm learning things about myself that I should have been learning at 12 and 13. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And now I'm just now learning these things, which, and I'll be very transparent, that's something that has affected my very much most recent adult relationships because now I'm realizing that I'm moving in this world in my identity that I need space to feel that out without the uh, without the permission or without the influence of someone else. And I'm the type of person when in relationship, I want to make sure that my partner or partners are happy. You know what I'm saying? So I give a lot to that. And I just came to a place where I realized that I didn't have the balance to be able to figure me out and do that at the same time. So, I mean, for all intents and purposes, I just stopped really people pleasing. In some ways, probably in my mid 30s. You know, I'm 40 now, so
Yeah.
like you feel late to the party, but there's such an amazing view from where you stand. You know what I'm saying? Like there is a very unique and authentic view. And there's some things that you know that other people don't know because other people might have had the luxury of skipping over things when you
Hmm.
actually had to go through every single step because we etched this out, you know what I'm saying, from bottom to top because nobody did this for us. Like we had to go back and do the work. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Um, so yeah, I just wanted to jump in on that people pleasing part because I don't think that's just an innate thing. I think it's kind of just a situation. It's really the people pleasing comes from trying to survive, just trying to survive. Honestly,
Absolutely. Because surviving is how we were taught. That's how we were raised. And I'm always gonna, anybody who talks to me about the struggles we have to go through as people in this world will hear me mention the trauma that we have faced as Black people and the ways that we were treated generationally over and over again. Those are patterns of behavior that our parents learned from their parents, who learned that from their parents because they were just trying to survive. So, a lot of us have trauma from our parents hitting us. That's how they were taught to teach us to behave. You want somebody to behave, you hit them. That's what they were shown. And it worked for a long ass time. Unfortunately, that's the lesson that came from that. So we have this people pleasing because in some situations in our previous past, if we didn't people please, we got killed for it. We learned to people please out of survival. So absolutely, yes, that's a great point. I got a little preachy on that, my bad. But here we are. Um, Anybody else want to reference their relationships before we kind of scooch on to the to something else?
I think
No.
we can move on.
All right, let's do it. So we're talking about people pleasing, the way our relationships have changed us. What are, wait, let me not lose myself. hmm hmm What are some of the practices that you have found to help you deepen your relationships? And I also want to point out the relationship that we have with ourself. I know in the last conversation we talked about authenticity, and I appreciate Chauncey bring that up because this is very much a conversation that includes that because being authentic is a part of how you show up in relationship. So, what is the things that have helped you deepen your relationship with others, that have maybe even helped you deepen your relationship with yourself? This would be, if we had a Libra in here, this would be their bread and butter, you know.
I
So
want
let's
to. Let
Go.
me. I can go ahead and jump in on this first. Be the first one to speak on this one. I will say what has that found helped me is actually working on communicating. Right, finding my learning more about myself, like accepting who I am. It's one, right,
Yes.
and then realizing what my strength and what my weaknesses are. Right, I know one of my weaknesses is being able to communicate. When I say communicate, I mean like communicate my feelings, because I know as me as a cat, a corn, us in feelings don't get along very well, right? We don't know how to express those very well, but I know that is my weakness, right? So that's something that I've been working on bettering, right? Especially being in especially being in a relationship, that type of relationships that require more communication and
Yes.
being more upfront and talking about what's going on, so there's no confusion. Everybody's getting the reassurance. Nobody thinks I stopped loving them because I just so happened to talk to them that day. Just making sure to continue that type of deal is something that I've found help me better in my relationships, not just with my partners, but with myself as well, right? Because that gives me the opportunity to sit back and think, like, really, how do I feel about this?
Hmm.
Right? What is my feelings, my emotions? So it's more that relationship with myself has grown more since within the last year than I think within any relationship I've had. Mind you, my current marriage, we're going to be at 15 years together next year, right? So she's been the person I've been with for the longest. And even then, I could see the growth and the changes, not just by me learning that in myself. I noticed that within our marriage, within our relationship, I've seen that change after being together for so long. Right. So that I will say for me, that's what kind of that practice of like practicing communication and, doing what I can has actually helped in my relationships.
And communication is really important. Like people talk about that all the time. You need communication in your relationships. You need the communication, but you also need it with yourself because that's a space where you could absolutely people please and get yourself in trouble, particularly being poly. You can't people please everyone because
Yeah.
you're going to get trapped. You're
Somebody
going
gonna
to
get
get in
left
trouble.
behind.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
communication is so important. That's, yeah.
I will I will say for me, you know, I think learning to love myself and start learning to please myself other rather than trying to please everybody else around me. Like for years I've always, did what was supposed to be, followed the what's supposed to be happening, right?
Hmm.
And always stayed in the little box of how everyone wanted me to live, right? But then when I started living and started pleasing me, then I feel my relationship got better. I feel like um I owe it to me. I owe myself that free time. I owe myself that
Yeah.
pampering time. I owe myself, so and I understand how Chauncey and Bear, when you both say, you're single by choice and you're learning to you're dealing with yourself. You're dating yourself. You know,
Hmm.
and you have to do that. I didn't know how to do that for years. And when you start doing that doing things for yourself, then it opens the door. I've always been told that you have to learn to love yourself before anybody else can love you.
Mhm.
Yeah. And that's something I've seen challenged by people because they say like if I'm supposed to wait till I love myself, then no one's ever going to love me. And there's a part of that that I think people are missing in the translation. It's you don't have to be fully in love with yourself and think you're the most amazing thing in the world, but you got to have some love for yourself because the love you attract to yourself is going to be a reflection of that. So when you are attracting people who don't feel the love, there's a part of that that's coming from within you that's saying, I don't really deserve to feel the love. You got to know that you deserve to feel the love, and there's something in that thought process, whether you believe yourself to love yourself or not. There's something in that thought process that says, I love myself because I know I deserve it.
I think even in my past cheating life, right? I was so busy cheating, looking for love, right? And the love that I was actually looking for was the love within myself. And so once I was able to find that, I think it made me a better person.
Absolutely.
I think we toss this word love around, and the relationship with that word is so wild, right? Like when we talk about love, like everything that surrounds love is always very cushy and very pretty. Like when we're talking, like if we're talking about generally the idea of the way that love is supposed to be, right? Even down to those who read the Bible, love is kind, love is patient, right?
Yeah.
Um, and when you look at those like words, kindness and patience, nobody said it was always all good, with those words, because I get a lot of feedback in my life that I'm very tough on people. And that is one of the ways, that is my outward love language. Like when I care about you, I hold you accountable and I grab you by the collar and say, put your chin up. You can do more than that. And I don't let you shortchange yourself. That is how I show love. Now, for some people, that comes off as a bit brash. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? And I also have to learn how to temper that as well, because more than loving people, it is my interest in being able to be received by people that I care about, because it doesn't matter how much I love you, if you don't receive what I'm saying, it doesn't matter anyway, right? So I'm working on
Right.
that. That is a current work in my life. You know what I'm saying? Learning how to be not tough love, but tough in love, if that makes sense. Um, and I guess I say I was just listening to all this word fly around in this conversation about love, and I was just thinking about my relationship with that. Um, and I think that love, when we love ourselves, yes, we deserve good things. We deserve that self care. We deserve, because there's a lot of bad things that we say to ourselves, and I'm not necessarily addressing the bad things that we say to ourselves, because a lot of time that's just rhetoric. You know what I mean? That's just
Hmm.
negativity. You know what I'm saying? That's just like
It's
literally that's
lies and propaganda.
yeah, basically. But when I'm talking about accountability, I think for me personally, accountability is the best form of love, because here's the thing. As a coach, if I'm a in my previous life doing sports, I found that the coach pours into the people that they feel have the talent. They ride them the hardest typically, right? They have the talent, they have the skill, and they just need to be pushed. And I think that's a part of love that we don't talk about often enough, is pushing. Even within community, I see this so many times where we are making things so soft for everything. And while softness is necessary, because a lot of us do live very difficult lives, but I'm doing you a disservice. We are doing each other a disservice, and we are doing ourselves a disservice by the imbalance of only softness. And I think I just wanted to bring that into the conversation about love. Um, Not just being soft. It's not just what we want to hear. It's not just always what we want to feel, because oftentimes, I mean, if each of us look back in our past, a lot of the lessons that have grown us and brought us to the next levels in our lives have been difficult. I take trial and tribulation as a compliment at this point in my life, because if I couldn't handle it, if I wasn't strong enough to handle it, it would not appear. So that's
Absolutely.
telling me you got what it takes. You got what it takes. If everything was easy for me, I mean, although that may feel good, but I think I just look at things a little bit differently. I look at things a little bit differently. And just so you know, as tough as I am on other people, I'm twice as tough on myself. I'm twice as tough on myself. I don't let myself off the hook about things. And I'm actually in the process of trying to learn how to just make sure that I'm loving myself and not over tough loving myself, if that makes sense.
Mm.
Because that can be bad too. That can set yourself up for failure, and things of that nature. But accountability rings strong to me. You know what I mean? Because I think it makes you a fisherman, not one who
Mm.
receives fish. And it's so important for us to be self-sufficient. If everything is handed to us, even in relationship, if somebody tells you everything, if you're never challenged to do the work on yourself, that relationship will go one side and it will go imbalanced. So while that other person is doing their work or those other people are doing their work, if you're not doing your work, once their work is done, their tolerance is going to be reduced for the fact that you are not growing in that space. So it is
Absolutely.
really, really important for us to make sure we balance that conversation with self-love and not just equate love with pretty soft things. You know what I'm saying? Love, I think the deepest love is fertile ground. And we know that tilling the ground causes us to dig in, open up that soil. You know what I'm saying? It's
Gotta
not
get
always,
dirty.
yeah, it's not always beautiful. It's not always beautiful. So
Yeah,
that's my
I can relate to that. Um, I think we all can. I'm sure. Um, but the idea that love has its difficulties, but they're there to teach you more about yourself, to deepen the relationship you have with yourself, and hopefully take that and deepen the relationships that you have with people in the future. One of my hardest, most difficult relationships was with someone that challenged my softness. I was used to being soft. I was used to being the soft, nurturing type. And this person consistently manipulated me because of that and used that to her benefit to keep me in a relationship, even though I more than once tried to leave. But when I tried to leave, she got violent and made it difficult. That's where the softness came in. I'm not a fighter. So I'm going to sit, I'm going to back down and take whatever's being handed to me because it's there for a reason. But the lesson I got out of that is you can't always be soft. Sometimes you got to show up and be the wall. You got to be the brick wall, be unwavering, and stand for yourself and your truth. So at least for me, that's how that went for me. I had to stand in that, which meant I had to fight a bitch. But I had to stand in my truth and go, you're not gonna keep bullying me to stay in a relationship with you, Miss Lady. No, thank you. I don't like you at all. It's time for me to go. And that is also loving yourself. Sometimes you gotta fight for your right to be
To
free,
party. To party? Oh.
to party,
to live, to live,
to live, to
in
live
this.
in freedom and parties. All right.
That's all I heard.
Fight for your right to party.
I
But
mean, the thing about that though, Bear, is that I don't think that being compassionate and loving and soft makes you weak. I don't think that it's synonymous. Actually, some of the people who continue to love even after being severely hurt are some of the strongest people I know. And I think that we also have to strip those two things from being weakness being a stigma of softness. I mean, silk is one of the strongest fabrics in the world. You know what I'm saying? And it is the most sought after, most expensive, and one of the softest, right? So, I mean, let's be clear: softness does not necessarily equal weakness. But I think that
that
there
was
was
the
something,
lesson for me.
yeah, you learned something right there, and how to dig that out, and how to um, It doesn't always have to be there. Like, you don't always have to have that face front, but you need to know that you can access it. One of my favorite quotes is, uh, "Better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war," um, because war will come, and if you don't know how to access it, then you won't survive,
Yeah,
especially internally.
especially. Ooh. All right. So we're gonna hit our conclusion space. I appreciate everybody for sharing and showing up with this can be a very intimate topic, so I appreciate all of us showing up in that space ready to share. um, Relationships are important to how we see ourselves and each other. It affects many parts of our lived experience, and further developing standards and boundaries around how we want to be loved by others. It keeps us authentic in how we show up in those relationships, as I mentioned earlier. And also, it's not our load to carry if we don't fit into the standards others have set for themselves. Knowing when to exit a relationship is just as important as knowing when to enter one. So, any last thoughts, comments, concerns? We got,
I would definitely add that
oh,
boundaries,
boundaries.
boundaries, just like you said in the conclusion. Yeah, boundaries, knowing your own boundaries. It was a post on Facebook actually, now that that's coming up, that I seen, and grab it real quick, and it states, the real flex is training your mind to be stronger than your feelings and your boundaries stronger than your empathy, which was something that I definitely, had to learn. Is that being a giver, being
Mm,
a spiritual healer, as the path that I've been called to lead on, giving your light and not having that boundary and not having that reciprocity, and knowing, you know, what your foundation is,
mhm.
who it is that you are, your beliefs, your morals, your values, things that you will accept, things that you won't accept, and being able to say no, not like this, or no, this is not for me.
No
Being
is a
able to
full
really,
sentence.
right, it is an answer, no, and
Mhm.
not over giving. That, yeah, being able to really have those boundaries in place and not feeling bad about it.
That part. The shame that has been put around us enforcing our standards and boundaries, even from the point of, and I'll bring up something I'll say is kind of trivial, but that really depends on your perspective. I was like one of the first people who started drinking 100% juice. And when I would tell people that, the amount of times I got called bougie for wanting to drink real juice. Are you kidding me? So yeah, you got to know what you're willing to put up with. Them boundaries, them standards. That's about how you want to live. That's not for other people. Um, Cause good grief, you might end up in an abusive relationship with somebody who's trapping you for 3 years because you don't know how to put up your own boundaries, like
Well,
I
and
did.
and then knowing that word no, no, that word no is a complete sentence.
Hmm.
There's nothing after that word no. And so me personally, I had to start saying that, because I was giving, 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 and then nothing was. I wasn't get feeding back into self.
Yes, that feeding back into self is such an important component of that, especially as givers. When you're giving to everyone, you don't give to yourself. Who's giving to you if you surround yourself with takers because you don't have the boundaries up to protect yourself from those types of people? Absolutely.
Man, you said you might end up in an abusive relationship with somebody. You might end up in an abusive relationship with yourself
That
if you
part.
don't put them boundaries up. You know what I'm saying? That's real, man. And that ain't
Mhm.
nobody there to save you either. Nobody even knows what's going on. Nobody even knows what's going on. I'm sure that a lot of us, a lot of people probably have experienced that at one point in time or another, being in their own personal internal abusive relationship with themselves. Um, yeah, my rule is though, if you wouldn't let nobody else talk to you like that, you ain't gonna talk to yourself like that. So
And that's accurate. That's a rule more of us should follow.
real life.
Easier said than done, but
It is.
It definitely is easier said than done, but I mean, like anything, it takes work. It
In
takes
practice.
calling it out. First, it takes being like, look, you wildin'. You know what I mean? Like
mm,
that be the key is really admitting to ourselves. Like a lot of us, the truth of the matter is, we not just givers, just by nature. I mean, a lot of us are kind, but the truth of the matter is telling the truth to yourself says sometimes I just do this just to avoid conflict. Sometimes I
Mhm.
just do this because I don't want to deal with having to deal or whatever the case may be. And when you start telling the truth to yourself about that, then you realize, like, I mean, you're not as nice as you think you are. You might be kind, but you're not as nice as you think you are.
Look.
That's
mm,
okay too. It's important to deal with that, but like, yeah, like it starts with just telling the truth, like really taking inventory of yourself and telling the truth to yourself. And I try to do that every day, man. I analyze my actions all the time. Where did that come from? Why do you feel that way? That's why I don't really react to people usually right away, because the first thing I'm doing is I'm assessing myself. Unless it's some inherent danger, I really need to go within myself. Why do I feel like that?
Yeah,
What am I doing?
absolutely.
You know what I'm
mm,
saying? So it's just that's key.
It's a big component of the relationships we have with other people is checking within and going, okay, uh, whose voice is this telling me nobody likes me? Whose voice is this telling me that when this person said this thing this one particular way, they meant this? Like
mhm.
maybe they just meant the words that they said, and
Mhm.
you ain't got to read into it.
Yeah.
Maybe.
But also, if they did mean it offensively, should I care? If they meant it like, that's on them. I don't gotta be around them. I don't gotta deal
Exactly.
with them.
I ain't got to carry that burden.
Yeah,
They could have meant it. I like to play dumb for people when they be talking to me some kind of way. Like I'm gonna pretend like I know you're trying to say something, but I'm gonna pretend like you're when people give you them fake compliments.
right. Like, what do you? I
I'm
mean,
gonna pretend like that compliment was real. Thank you.
so much.
I appreciate that. That was so nice of you. And they be
Yeah.
confused.
You gotta
Right,
feel like,
You gotta
whose
do
is
what
it
you
game?
gotta do.
You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Like, when
right.
somebody do something, does that belong to me or does that belong to you? You have to assess it. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Assess it.
Absolutely. So let's cover just in case we get a little lost. We got like 7 minutes. Um, for anyone who might be watching this now, later, and they want to join our conversations, um, meet up with us at our support groups, which happen on the second Monday and the third Thursday. For this month, that will be November 13th and November 16th. So if you want to catch up with us, we will be furthering this conversation in those spaces. Plus, anything anybody needs to talk about, um, those are the spaces that we have for people to come. If you don't want to communicate on such a public forum, such as we are doing right now, you can come to those support groups and talk about whatever's going on for you. We are there to have those conversations and to support each other and to build community. So let's make sure we are shouting ourselves out. Go check out the IG. Go check out the Facebook page. We're on Facebook right now. Are we on YouTube?
Yeah. Yeah, we're on YouTube and Facebook right now,
There
live.
you go.
And just real quick, let me clarify. For when it comes to the support group, it is for Black and Brown, BIPOC, trans men. All right. I love our wives and our partners and everything, but unfortunately, we don't have that space for you just yet. So right
Yes.
now,
We'll
it
work on
is a
that.
space. Yeah, it's coming. It's on the to-do list, right? Uh,
Want to create a safe space for everybody to communicate for people, but those support groups are specific to Black and brown transmasculine persons. You don't have to identify as a man. You can be a non-binary AFAB individual as well, but you do have to be Black and transmasculine
yes,
or brown or indigenous or person of color.
correct.
We covered all our bases.
Yes. And the only thing you gotta do is text the number below, and you'll get updates on times and everything. So yeah,
Absolutely. Check out the website every now and then if you are more of a website person like
yes.
me.
Because on our website we have our resources like hair clippers, emergency HRT.
Mhm.
So Windows emergency HRT. Just real quick, we have the needles, syringes. Unfortunately, we can't give you actual HRT, but we can give you all the stuff that you may be short on, or short supply of that stuff. And then hygiene kits. I know times is hard, especially about to be winter and all that other stuff. So we have
Yeah,
those as well. And then after top surgery kits is available as well for those who are about to have surgery coming up. Just shoot us that so we can make sure we get in the mail in time so you can have it. A lot of guys have liked them, enjoyed them. So so make sure you get you one. So that is available on the website as well. So
yes. Lots of stuff in that after surgery, after top surgery kit too. So gotten pretty good reviews about that. People really like the guys who have gotten them are really geeked about it. So
mhm.
all right, we got 4 minutes left. We're just gonna hang out, I guess.
I guess I can also, since we got 4 minutes, go ahead and plug in our upcoming events. So mark your calendars. November 18th, we're having a Friendsgiving brunch in Cleveland, Ohio, because we're Black Trans Men of Ohio, right? So we're gonna do it in Cleveland, Ohio.
What's up,
It
Ohio?
is it is our legal clinic. So with this legal clinic, it is exclusively for BIPOC, Black, Brown, trans individuals. It doesn't matter, masculine, feminine. If you fall underneath the trans umbrella and you are Black or brown, you can come out and have the opportunity to talk to an attorney and ask them questions about the steps and everything that you need to get your name and your gender marker changed on your license, passport, your will and testament, all that stuff, right? So all of that is going to be the opportunity to talk to an attorney. Because like one question we had is, what happens if I have a record, right? That
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately that affects us, right? So that's a question that we create that space for individuals to be able to come and get their name changed, right? Get there. And then we also have help passing out filling out the paperwork. There's going to be a notary in there, free food. If you are short on transportation and you live in the Cleveland area but you want to attend, hit us up, let us know. We can potentially help you get there, transportation as well. So that is an opportunity as well. So we're trying to remove all the barriers. We're trying to help out where we can. Then
Absolutely.
after that, in December, we are having our holiday party in Columbus. So
That's
stay
good.
tuned for more details on that. We're gonna have DJ Bear on the ones and twos. So shout out,
That's good.
So other than that, I think that's all the announcements that I have
I
that I
got
could think of.
I got another gig on the 20th
Okay.
this month at Stonewall for with Mosaic. They're doing a Trans Day of Remembrance
Okay.
event
Nice.
at Stonewall from 6 to 9, I believe. There should be some performances, some drag burlesque as well. So come through. Trans Day of Remembrance. Anybody else want to plug there? We got 1 minute.
Yeah, and I'm also doing Trans Day of Visibility on November the 20th as well in Akron, Ohio. And I will be partnering with a local organization, Trans Joy. There,
Nice.
I'll be
Yes.
giving I'll be speaking there.
Okay.
Very cool.
And I'm a life and spiritual coach. So check out the website, BeTheLightReflection.com. All types of goodies on there. Products, bath salts, shower bombs.
Shower bomb. A shower bomb.
Yes.
Yes, awesome. Shower bomb. Shout out to the shower bombs.
Yes.
Right. Right. Let you
Right.
get your meditation on before you rush to work. There you go.
Mm-hmm. Look,
All right.
we good? Everybody
Yeah.
said what they wanted to say.
All right. Well,
All right.
thank you everybody for tuning in. See you again in a month.
Yes. Good night.
Good night.